ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. This is second video on the talks with Swami Vivekananda. This is talk number 5. And the topics in this talk are initiating the disciple, origin of the sacred thread, the problem of virtue and vice, where is the self realized. Place Alam Bazar, Math, year 1897, month May. It was the 19th Vesak of the year 1303 B.S. Swamiji had agreed to initiate the disciple today. So early in the morning, he reached the Alam Bazar Mutt. Seeing the disciple, Swamiji jokingly said, "Well, you are to be sacrificed today, are you not?" After this remark to the disciple, Swamiji, with a smile, resumed his talk with others about American subjects, and in due relevance he came along such topics also as how one pointed in devotion one has to be in order to build up a spiritual life, how firm faith and strong devotion to the Guru have to be kept up, how deep reliance has to be placed on the words of the Guru, and how even one's life has to be laid down for his sake. Then, putting some questions to the disciple, Swamiji began to test his heart. "Well, are you ready to do my bidding to your utmost, whatever it be and whenever it may come? If I ask you to plunge into the Ganges or to jump from the roof of a house, meaning it all for your good, could you do even that without any hesitation? Just think of it even now, otherwise don't rush forward on the spur of the moment to accept me as your Guru." And the disciple nodded assent to all questions of the kind. Swamiji then continued, "The real Guru is he who leads you beyond this maya of endless birth and death, who graciously destroys all the griefs and maladies of the soul. The disciple of old used to repair to the hermitage of the Guru, fuel in hand. The Guru, after ascertaining his competence, would teach him the Vedas. After initiation, fastening round his waist the threefold filament of munja, a kind of grass, as the emblem of his vow to keep his body, mind, and speech in control. With the help of this girdle, the disciple used to tie up his kopina. Later on, the custom of wearing the sacred thread superseded this girdle of munja grass. Disciple: would you then say, sir, that the use of the holy thread we have adopted is not really Vedic custom? Swamiji, nowhere is there mention of thread being so used in the Vedas. The modern author of Smritis, Raghunandan Bhattacharya, also puts it thus: at this stage, the sacrificial girdle should be put on. Neither in Gobhila's Griha Sutras do we find any mention of the girdle made of thread. In the Shastras, this first Vedic sanskara purification ceremony before the Guru has been called the Upanayana. But see, to what is said, pass our country has been brought, straying away from the truth path of the Shastras. The country has been overwhelmed with usages and observances originating in particular localities or popular opinion or with the women folk. That's why I ask you to proceed along the path of the Shastras as in olden times. Have faith within yourselves and thereby bring it back into the country. Plant in your heart the faith of Nachiketa, even go up to the world of Yama like him. Yes, if to know the secrets of the Atma, to liberate your soul, to reach the true solution of the mystery of birth and death, you have to go to the very jaws of death and realize the truth thereby. Well, go there with an undaunted heart. It is fear alone that is death. You have to go beyond all fear. So from this day, be fearless of at once to lay down your life to your own liberation and for the good of others. What good is to carrying along a load of bones and flesh? Initiated into the mantra of extreme self-sacrifice for the sake of God, go lay down for others this body of flesh and bones like the Muni Dadhiji. Those alone, say the Shastras, are the real Gurus who have studied the Vedas and the Vedanta, who are knowers of the Brahman, who are able to lead others beyond initiated. No speculation in such a case. Do you know what has become of this principle now? Like the blind leading the blind. The initiation ceremony was duly gone through in the chapel. After this, Swamiji spoke out. Give me the Guru Dakshina. The disciple replied, Oh, what shall I give? On this, Swamiji suggested, Well, fetch any fruit from the storeroom. So the disciple ran for the storeroom and came back into the chapel with 10 or 12 lychees. These Swamiji took from his hand and ate up one by one, saying, Now your Guru Dakshina is made. A member of the Math Brahmachari. Afterwards, Swami Sudhananda also had his initiation from Swamiji on this occasion. Swamiji then had his dinner and went to take a short test. After the siesta, he came and sat in the hall of the upper story. The disciple, finding this opportunity, asked, Sir, how and whence came the idea of virtue and vice? Swamiji, it is from the idea of the manifold that these have evolved. The more a man advances towards oneness, the more ideas of I and you subside, ideas from which all these pairs of opposites such as virtues and vice have originated. When the idea that so and so is different from me comes to mind, all other ideas of distinction begin to manifest, while with the complete realization of oneness, no more grief or illusion remains for man. तत्र को मोह कह शोक एकतौ मनु पश्वतः. For him who sees oneness, where is there any grief or any delusion? Sin may be said to be the feeling of every kind of weakness. From this weakness springs jealousy, malice, and so forth. Hence, weakness is sin. The self within is always shining forth, resplendent. Turning away from that, people say, I, with their attention held by this material body, this queer cage of flesh and bones. This is the root of all weakness. From that habit only the relative outlook on life has emerged in this world. The absolute truth lies beyond that duality. Disciple, well, is then all this relative experience not true, Swamiji? As long as this idea of I remain, it is true. And the instant the realization of I as the Atma comes, this world of relative existence becomes false. What people speak of as sin is the result of weakness, is but another form of the egoistic idea I am the body. When the mind gets steadfast in the truth, I am the self, then you go beyond merit and demerit, virtue and vice. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the I dies, all trouble is at an end. Disciple, sir, this I has a most tenacious life. It is very difficult to kill it. Swamiji, yes, in one sense it is very difficult, but in another sense it is quite easy. Can you tell me where this I exists? How can you speak of anything being killed which never exists at all? Man only remains hypnotized with the false idea of an ego. When this ghost is off from us, all dreams vanish, and then it is found that the one self only exists from the highest being to a blade of grass. This will have to be known to be realized. All practice or worship is only for taking off this veil. When that will go, you will find that the sun of absolute knowledge is shining in its own luster. 4. The Atma only is self-luminous and has to be realized by itself. How can that which can be experienced only by itself be known with the help of any other thing? Hence the Shruti says, Vigyantar mare ken Vigyano yat. Well, through what means is that to be known which is the knower. Whatever you know through the instrumentality of your mind. But mind is something material. It is active only because there is the pure self behind it. So how can you know that self through your mind? But this only becomes known after all, that the mind cannot reach the pure self, no, nor even the intellect. Our relative knowledge ends just there. Then, when the mind is free from activity or functioning, it vanishes and the self is revealed. This state has been described by the commentator Sankara as aproksha anubhuti or supersensuous perception. Disciple, but sir, the mind itself is the I. If that mind is gone, then the I also cannot remain. Swamiji, yes, the state that comes then is the real nature of the ego. The I that remains then is omnipresent, all pervading the self of all. Just as the Ghatakasa, Ghatakasa, when the jar is broken, becomes the Mahaakasa, for with the destruction of the jar, the enclosed space is not destroyed. The puny eye which you were thinking of as confined in the body becomes spread out and is thus realized in the form of the all-pervading I or the self. Hence, what matters is to the real I or the self whether the mind remains or is destroyed. What I say you will realize in course of time. Kalinatmani Vindati. It is realized within oneself in due time as you go with Shravana and Manana, proper hearing and proper thinking. You will fully understand it in due time and then you will go beyond mind, then there will be no room for any such question. Hearing all this, the disciple remained quiet on his seat, and Swamiji, as he gently smoked, continued, how many shastras have been written to explain this simple thing, and yet men fail to understand it. How they are wasting this precious human life on the fleeting pleasures of some silver coins and the frail beauty of woman. Wonderful is the influence of Mahamaya. Mother, O Mother. Talk number 6. Starting the Ramakrishna mission, did Swami Vivekananda differ from Sri Ramakrishna? Swami Vivekananda's attitude towards Sri Ramakrishna, the law of grace, Grish Chandra Ghosh. These were the topics to be discussed in this talk. Place Bagh Bazar, Calcutta, year 1897. Swamiji has been staying for some days at the house of the late Balram Babu. At his wish, a large number of devotees of Sri Ramakrishna have assembled at the house at 3 p.m. Swami Yogananda is amongst those present here. The object of Swamiji is to form an association. When all the present had taken their seats, Swamiji proceeded to speak as follows. The conviction has grown in my mind after all my travels in various lands that no great cause can succeed without an organization. In a country like ours, however, it does not seem quite practicable to me to start an organization at once with a democratic basis or work by general voting. People in the West are more educated in this respect and less jealous of one another than ourselves. They have learned to respect merit. Take, for instance, my case. I was just an insignificant man there, and yet see how cordially they received and entertained me. When with the spread of education, the masses in our country will grow more sympathetic and liberal when they will learn to have their thoughts expanded beyond the limits of sect or party, then it will be possible to work on the democratic basis of organization. For this reason, it is necessary to have a dictator for this society. Everybody should obey him, and then in time we may work on the principle of general voting. Let this association be named after him, in whose name indeed we have embraced the monastic life, with whom as your ideal in life you all toil on the field of work from your station in family life. Within 20 years of whose passing away, a wonderful diffusion of his holy name and extraordinary life has taken place both in the east and the west. We are the servants of the Lord. Be you all helpers in this cause. When Srijat Girish Chandra Ghosh and all other householder disciples present had approved of the above proposal, the future program of the Society of Sri Ramakrishna was taken up for discussion. The society was named the Ramakrishna Mission. Swamiji himself became the general president of the mission, and other office bearers also were elected. The rule was laid down that the association should hold meetings at the house of Balram Bose every Sunday at 4 p.m. Needless to say that Swamiji used to attend these meetings whenever convenient. When the meeting had broken up and the members departed, addressing Swami Yogananda, Swamiji said, "So the work is now begun this way. Let us see how far it succeeds by the will of Sri Ramakrishna." Swami Yogananda, you are doing these things with Western methods. Should you say Sri Ramakrishna left us any such instructions? Swamiji, well, how do you know that all this is not on Sri Ramakrishna's lines? He had an infinite breadth of feeling, and dare you shut him up within your own limited views of life? life. I will break down these limits and scatter broadcast over the earth his boundless inspiration. He never instructed me to introduce any rites of his own worship. We have to realize the teachings he has left us about religious practice and devotion, concentration and meditation and such higher ideas and truths, and then preach these to all men. The infinite number of faiths are only so many paths. I have not been born to found one more sect in a world already teeming with sects. We have been blessed with obtaining refuge at the feet of the Master, and we are born to carry his message to the dwellers of the three worlds. Swami Yogananda uttered no word of dissent, and so Swamiji continued. Time and again have I received in this life marks of his grace. He stands behind and gets all this work done by me. When lying helpless under a tree in an agony of hunger, when I had not even a scrap of cloth for copying, when I was resolved on traveling penniless round the world, even then help came in all ways by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna. And again, when crowds jostled with one another in the streets of Chicago to have a sight of this Vivekananda, then also I could digest without difficulty all that honor, a hundredth part of which would have been enough to turn mad any ordinary man, because I had his grace and by his will victory followed everywhere. Now I must conclude by doing something in this country. So, casting all doubt away, please help my work and you will find everything fulfilled by His will. Swami Yogananda, yes, whatever you will shall be fulfilled. And are we not all ever obedient to you now and then? I do clearly see how Sri Ramakrishna is getting all these things done through you, and yet to speak plainly, some misgiving rises it at intervals, for as we saw it, his way of doing things was different. So I question myself, are we sure that we are not going astray from Sri Ramakrishna's teachings? And so I take the opposing attitude and warn you. Swamiji, you see, the fact is that Sri Ramakrishna is not exactly what the ordinary followers have comprehended him to be. He had infinite moods and phases. Even if you might born an idea of the limits of Brahmagana, the knowledge of the Absolute, you could not do the same with the unfathomable depths of his mind. Thousands of Vivekanandas may spring forth through one gracious glance of his eyes, but instead of doing that, he has chosen to get things done this time through me as his single instrument. And what can I do in this matter, you see? Saying this, Swamiji left to attend to something else waiting for him, and Swami Yogananda went on praising Swamiji's versatile gifts. Meanwhile, Swamiji returned and asked the disciple, do the people in your part of the country know much of Sri Ramakrishna? Disciple, only one man, Nag Mahasaya, came to Sri Ramakrishna from our part of the Bengal. It is from him that many came to hear of him and had their curiosity excited to know more. But that Sri Ramakrishna was the incarnation of God, the people there have not yet come to know, and some would not believe it even if told so. Swamiji, do you think it is an easy matter to believe so? We who had actual dealings with him in every respect, we who heard of that fact again and again from his own human lives, we who lived and stayed with him for 24 hours of the day, even we have doubts about it coming on us off and on. So what to speak of others? Disciple, did Sri Ramakrishna out of his own lips ever say that he was God, the all perfect Brahma? Swamiji, yes, he did so many times, and he said this to all of us. One day, while he was staying at the Kasipur garden, his body in imminent danger of falling off forever, by the side of his bed, I was saying in my mind, well, now if you can declare that you are God, then only will I believe you are really God Himself. It was only 2 days before he passed away. Immediately he looked up towards me all on a sudden and said, "He who was Rama, he who was Krishna, verily is he now Rama Krishna in this body, and that not merely from the standpoint of your Vedanta." At this I was struck dumb. Even we have not had yet the perfect faith. After hearing it again and again from the holy lips of our Lord Himself, our minds still get disturbed now and then with doubt and despair. And so, what shall we speak of others being slow to believe? It is indeed a very difficult matter to be able to declare and believe a man with a body like ours to be God Himself. We may just go to the length of declaring Him to be a perfected one or a knower of Brahma. Well, it matters nothing whatever you may call Him or think of him a saint or a knower of a Brahma or anything, but take it from me. Never did come to this earth such an all perfect man as a Sri Ramakrishna. In the utter direction darkness of the world, this great man is like the shining pillar of illumination in this age, and by his light alone will man now cross the ocean of samsara. Disciple, to me it seems, sir, that true faith comes only after actually seeing or hearing something. Mathur Babu, I have heard, actually saw so many things about Sri Ramakrishna and thus had that wonderful faith in him. By realizing the Brahma sages may declare their identity with any being such as Manu and so forth. Wide the Vedanta Sutras 1.30. Son-in-law of Rani Rasmati, the foundress of the temple at Dakshinamurti, Mathura Das. Swamiji, who had Swamiji, he who believes not even after seeing and thinks that it is all hallucination or dream and so on. The great transfiguration of Krishna, the Vishwarupa form universal, was seen alike by Duryodhana and by Arjuna, but only Arjuna believed while Duryodhana took it to be magic. Unless he makes us understand, nothing can be stated or understood. Somebody comes to the fullest faith even without seeing or hearing, while somebody else remains plunged in doubt even after witnessing various extraordinary powers for 12 years with his own eyes. The secret of it all is His grace, but then one must preserve so that the grace may be received. Disciple, is there, sir, any law of grace? Swamiji, yes and no. Disciple, how is that, Swamiji? Those who are pure always in body, mind, and speech, who have strong devotion, who persevere in meditation, who discriminate between the real and the unreal, who persevere in meditation and contemplation. Upon them alone the grace of the Lord descends. The Lord, however, is beyond all natural laws, is not under any rules and regulations, or just as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, he has the child's nature, and that's why we find some failing to get any response even after calling on him for millions of births, while someone else whom we regard as a sinful or penitent man or a disbeliever who would have illumination in a flash, on the latter the Lord perhaps lavishes his grace quite unsolicited. You may argue that this man had good merit stored up from previous life, but the mystery is really difficult to understand. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, sometimes do rely on him, he like the dry leaf at the mercy of the wind. And again he would say, the wind of his grace is always blowing. What you need to do is to unfurl your sail. Disciple. But sir, this is a most tremendous statement. No reasoning I see can stand here. Swamiji, the limit of all reasoning and arguing is in the realm of Maya. It lies within the categories of space, time, and causation. But he is beyond these categories. We speak of his law still. He is beyond all law. He creates or becomes all that we speak of as laws of nature, and yet he is outside of them all. He on whom his grace descends in a moment goes beyond all law. For this reason, there is no condition in grace. It is as his play or sport. All this creation of the universe is like his play. Lokvattu Leela Kevalam. It is the pure delight of sport as in the case of man. Is it not possible for him who creates and destroys the universe as if in play to grant salvation by grace to the greatest sinner? But then it is just his pleasure, his play to get somebody through the practice of spiritual discipline and somebody else without it. Disciple, sir, I can't understand this, Swamiji, and you need not. Only get your mind to cling to him as far as you can, for then only the great magic of this world will break of itself. But then you must persevere. You must take off your mind from lust and lucre, must discriminate always between the real and the unreal, must settle down into the mood of bodilessness with the brooding thought that you are not this body, and must always have the realization that you are the all pervading Atma. This persevering practice is called Purushakara, self exertion as distinguished from grace. By such self-exertion will come true reliance on Him, and that is the goal of human achievement. After a pause, Swamiji resumed, had you not been receiving His grace, why else would you come here at all? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, those who have had the grace of God cannot but come here. Wherever they might be, whatever they might be doing, they are sure to be affected by words or sentiments uttered from here. Just take your own case. Do you think it is possible without the grace of God to have the blessed company of Nag Mahasaya, a man who rose to spiritual perfection through the strength of divine grace and came to know fully what this grace really means? Anek janam Siddh Satato Yati Pram Gatim. One attains the highest stage after being perfected by the practice of repeated births, Gita. It is only by virtue of great religious merit acquired through many births that one comes across a great soul like him. All the characteristics of the highest type of bhakti spoken of in the scriptures have manifested themselves in Nag Mahasaya. It is only in him that we actually see fulfilled the widely quoted text Tarnadapi Sunichen. Blessed indeed is your East Bengal to have been hallowed by the touch of Nag Mahasaya's feet. While speaking, the Swamiji rose to pay a visit to the great poet Babu Grish Chandra Ghosh. Swami Yogananda and the disciple followed him. Reaching Grish Babu's place, Swamiji seated himself and said, "You see, GC, the impulse is constantly coming nowadays to my mind to do this and to do that, to scatter broadcast on earth the message of Sri Ramakrishna and so on. But I pause again to reflect lest all this give rise to another sect in India. So I have to work with a good deal of caution. Sometimes I think, what if a sect does grow up? But then again the thought comes, no, Sri Ramakrishna never disturbed anybody's own spiritual outlook. He always looked at the inner sameness. Often do I restrain myself with this thought. Now, what do you say, Grease Babu? What can I say to this? You are the instrument in his hand. You have to do just what he would have you to do. I don't trouble myself over the detail, but I see that the power of the Lord is getting things done by you. I see it clear as daylight, Swamiji, but I think we do things according to our own will. Yet that in misfortunes and adversities, in times of want and poverty, he reveals himself to us and guides us along the true path. This I have been able to realize, but alas, I still fail to comprehend in any way the greatness of his power. Grace Babu. Yes, he said, if you understand it to the full, everything will at once vanish. Who will work then, or who will be made to work? After this, the talk drifted on to America, and Swamiji grew warm on this subject and went on describing the wonderful wealth of the country, the virtues and defects of men and women there, their luxury, and so on. Talk number 7, Solar Eclipse, Nature of Meditation, Practical Hints on Meditation, Need for Renunciation topics. Place Calcutta, year 1897. For some days past, Swamiji has been staying at Balram Bose's house, Bagh Bazar. There will be a total eclipse of the sun today. The disciple is to cook for Swamiji this morning, and on his presenting himself, Swamiji said, well, the cooking must be in the East Bengal style and we must finish our dinner before the eclipse comes. The inner apartments of the house were all unoccupied now, so the disciple went inside into the kitchen and started his cooking. Swamiji also was looking in now and then with a word of encouragement and sometimes with a joke as, take care, the soup must be after the East Bengal fashion. The cooking had been almost completed when Swamiji came in after his bath and sat down for a dinner, putting up his own seat and plate. Do bring in anything finished. Quick, he said. I cannot wait. I am burning with hunger. While eating, Swamiji was pleased with the curry with bitters and remarked, never have I enjoyed such a nice thing, but none of the things is so hot as your soup. It is just after the style of the Bardhaman district, said Swamiji, tasting the sour preparation. He then brought his dinner to a close and after washing sat on the bedstead inside the room. While having his after dinner smoke, Swamiji remarked to the disciple, whoever cannot cook well cannot become a good sadhu. Unless the mind is pure, good, tasteful cooking is not possible. Soon after this, the sound of bells and conch shells, etc., rose from all quarters. When Swamiji said, now that the eclipse has begun, let me sleep, and you please massage my feet. Gradually, the eclipse covered the whole of the sun's disk, and all around fell the darkness of dusk. While there were 15 or 20 minutes left for the eclipse to pass off, Swamiji rose from his siesta and after washing, jocosely said while taking a smoke, well, people say that whatever one does during an eclipse, one gets that million-fold in future. So I thought that the mother Mahamaya did not ordain that this body might have good sleep, and if I could get some sleep during the eclipse, I might have plenty of it in future. But it all failed, for I slept only for 15 minutes at the most. After this, at the behest of Swamiji, some short speeches were made. There was yet an hour left before dusk. When all had assembled in the parlor, Swamiji told them to put him any question they liked. Swami Sudhananda asked, what is the real nature of meditation, sir? Swamiji, meditation is the focusing of the mind on some object. If the mind acquires concentration on one object, it can be so concentrated on any object whatsoever. Disciple, mention is made in the scriptures of two kinds of meditation, one having some object, the other objectless. What is meant by all that, and which of the two is the higher one? Swamiji, first the practice of meditation has to proceed with some one object before the mind. Once I used to concentrate my mind on some black point. Ultimately, during those days, I could not see the point anymore, nor notice that the point was before me at all. The mind used to be no more, no wave of functioning would rise, as if it were all an ocean without any breath of air. In that state, I used to experience glimpses of sensuous supersensuous truth. So I think the practice of meditation, even with some trifling external object, leads to mental concentration. But it is true that the mind very easily attains calmness when one practices meditation with anything on which one's mind is most apt to settle down. This is the reason why we have in this country so much worship of the images of gods and goddesses. And what wonderful art developed from such worship. But no more of that now. The fact, however, is that the objects of meditation can never be the same in the cases of all men. People have proclaimed and preached to others only those external objects to which they held on to become perfected in meditation, oblivious of the fact later on that these objects are aids to the attainment of perfect mental calmness. Men have extolled them beyond everything else. They have wholly concerned themselves with the means, getting comparatively unmindful of the end. The real aim is to make the mind functionless, but this cannot be got at unless one becomes absorbed in some object, disciple. But if the mind becomes completely engrossed and identified with some object, how can it give us the consciousness of Brahma? Swamiji, yes, though the mind at first assumed the form of the object, yet later on the consciousness of that object vanishes. Then only the experience of pure I-ness remains. Disciple, well, sir, how is it that desire rises even after mental concentration is acquired? Swamiji, those are the outcome of previous sanskaras, deep-rooted impressions or tendencies. When Buddha was on the point of merging in samadhi, superconsciousness, Maya made his appearance. There was really no Maya extraneous to the mind. It was only the external reflection of the mind's previous sanskaras. But one hears of various fearful experiences prior to the attainment of perfection. Are they all mental projections, Swamiji? What else? But that the aspiring soul of a course does not make out at the time that all these are external manifestation of his own mind, but all the same there is nothing outside of it. Even what you see as this world does not exist outside, it is all a mental projection. When the mind becomes functionless, it reflects the Brahma consciousness. Then the vision of all spheres of existence may supervene. Yam yam lokam mansa samvibhati. Whatsoever sphere one may call up in mind, whatsoever is resolved on becoming realized at once, he who even on attaining this state of unfalsified self-determination preserves his vastfulness and is free from the bondage of desire. Verily attains to the knowledge of Brahma, but he who loses his balance after reaching this state gets the manifold powers but falls off from the supreme goal. So saying, Swamiji began to repeat Shiva, Shiva, and then continued, there is no way, none whatsoever, to the solution of the profound mystery of this life except through renunciation, 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 and renunciation. Let this be the one motto of your life. Sarvam vastu bhayavintam bhavi nirna vairagya bhi bhaya. For man, all things on earth are infected with fear. Vairagyam alone constitutes fearlessness. So, dear friends, I end this video here. Thanks a lot for watching this wonderful video. Please like, comment, and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar. Next video will start with talk number 8.